With the interior now completed and the exterior painted twice, I could move on to finishing off the final details on the exterior and also move on to the chassis a little later on in the video. There were still a couple of pieces that needed to be painted in a flat black, as these will remain visible through the clear parts once you install them. First off, it's these side pieces behind the side glass and also the main headliner. A couple light coats of flat black later, I could start unmasking and then move on the first steps of the assembly, putting in some pieces on the inside that will no longer be accessible once the chassis and interior have been put in, so these of course need to be done first. The headlights received a couple small decals for some of the LED strips in white, and I also painted some black on there just to tone it down a little bit, as the real ones are not as glossy chrome as these ones are. I could then put the lenses on and install them. Now, due to this being a snap kit, these parts do not need to be glued together, but rather just pressed in place, and they will hold there strong. Now, since I did apply a couple coats of paint and the tolerances already were pretty tight, I did need to press a little harder in some spots, and in some other places I even needed to drill out the holes a little bit just to clean them out in order for the parts to fit in place. Overall, no big issue, but it's just something to take into consideration, as pressing some of these parts in place could break them, as they do require a little bit of force. If you're not careful, you could just mess them up. The big lens for the taillights comes painted clear, or rather is unpainted clear plastic. So that needed to change. I just applied a couple coats of gloss clear red on top and both on the inside, let that dry for about a day, and could then carefully install it. On one of the previous episodes on this Audi, I received a couple comments about some pins that were misaligned with the interior and that needed to be changed. Now, in my case, I think Revell already came to the same conclusion and had fixed it prior to sending this kit out, so you could still see the remnants of these pre-existing pins, but the other ones that are in the correct position were already there. So for me, it was not a problem, but for some of the guys that got really early kits, it could be a problem. But if you're just getting a newer kit, it shouldn't be, if you're following my lead, I guess. And if you're not, then just remove those other pins and glue it in place. And if you do have the correct one, just build it as it should be. And in the meantime, pretty much the entire chassis has already been assembled. Now, there were some sink marks on the discs for the brakes. I did not fix these, as I was planning on having some 3D printed, but I didn't have the files ready, so I couldn't use them. So maybe in the future I will swap them out, but knowing me, I probably won't. Even though these don't really look that good with the wheels in place and the spokes positioned in a way that you can't see them, it is pretty much invisible. Now, in my case, I fully assembled the entire front grille, and that did cause a little bit of a problem putting the chassis in, as there is a small pin on one of the parts that needs to be installed afterwards. But since I'm applying quite a lot of pressure putting these parts in place, I just found a way around it and wiggled it in place, and it all fit together fine in the end. For all of the windows, I quickly just masked them off on the inside, and the side windows were also masked off on the outside for the window rubbers on the exterior piece. Now, I painted these in flat black. You could also paint these in gloss black, but that is all up to your personal opinion. Now, also for the rear half, for specifically the rear windows and the rear doors, and also the rear window on the rear, I unmasked the inside, and then I applied a couple coats of clear smoke to tint them. Now, it is up to you how dark you want to have them tinted. I just applied a couple of coats until I was happy. In order to install the side windows correctly, I made a small mistake. I glued some of the seatbelt material on the inside of the door panel and flipped it over to the other side, and that now was in the way for one of the lower clips to be put in place. So I simply just trimmed a little bit of that clip off, but it is just better to not have that seatbelt material there and use the clip, as that will align it a lot better. That is just one of the mistakes I made during this build. Overall, not a big deal, but it does make a little bit of a difference on the overall look and fit of those side windows. When installing the side mirrors, I also ran into the same problem as some of the other parts like the front grille, and I had to remove a little bit of the paint in order for them to slip in place. During the unboxing, I already went over the wheels that come standard with the kit. There is nothing wrong with them. The sizing even looks correct, and that is pretty special for a Revell, but I wasn't really 100% set on the design. Now my friend Ollie Fizzle is pretty handy with some of these 3D software thingies and is able to design a couple of wheels. He set out to find a couple sets he liked, as he's planning to build this kit for himself as well, and made 3 variations of pre-existing Audi wheels from various RS models and other models in their platform, and sent them over to me. Now these were sized to fit correctly with the standard tires of the kit and also the suspension. They might need a little bit of tweaking on some of the parts in order for them to fit perfectly, but overall the tires just slip on no problem and they fit really well in place. Now this was all done on my Elegoo Mars 3 Pro, printed with the Nova 3D resin, and I will all be leaving links in the description down below. Now I did print a couple versions of these, resized them here and there when it was necessary, and until it was a pretty much perfect fit, I started priming, painting, and clear coating them in order for them to fit on the model. Now you could even add some silver diamond cut style paintwork to these wheels. I decided just to leave them fully gloss black, nice and stealthy, as I really think that fits with the build. Overall, from the 3 designs, I liked this one and the RS7 style the best, so that is what I went with. On one side I went for the RS7 and the other one for the wide open small thin spoke wheel design. And as you probably all know by now, I like to torture myself and install the decals for the calipers last. If you remember the second episode where I repainted the roof and the rest of the body to remove a couple spots of dust and also fix my mistakes from polishing, I again had a little bit of dust in the roof. Now I wasn't really feeling all that great about polishing it again, so I just left it as is, and I figured another cool solution would be to add a ski box on top. Now luckily Blackbox STL has a couple of really cool designs for ski boxes on his page. I just chose the one that I liked most, printed it out on the Elegoo Mars, and then painted it gloss black to match all the other trim pieces in the gloss black as well. That was then simply just put in place. It has no magnets or holes in there, so you can just simply rest it on and remove it if you don't like it. I'm personally torn between. I kind of like the look, and since it is winter again where I am living, you see these a lot more, and it does kind of look cool, but it also looks really nice without. Let me know what you guys would prefer down in the comments below. Overall, a really enjoyable build, and I probably want to do another one in the future, but then again I do have a lot of other stuff to get to first.